o'clock, and I call this meeting to order. It is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. The Montgomery Economic Development Corporation is meeting via Zoom, most of us. I will open up to public comments. Richard, do we have anyone who wishes to speak during the public comment portion of our meeting?
I did not have anyone who pre-registered, and I don't see anyone present online unless you see something I do not see that wanted to speak.
Nope, I don't. So with the board's approval, we will move on. Oh, I'm sorry. For the record, let's just note, which we did earlier, we have a full house. We do have three new members, yes. Jeff Angelo, Ryan Lundeen, Carol Langley, and returning members Rebecca Huss, Arnett Easley, and Dan Walker are also here. Their positions were not up for reappointment, and Tom Cronin as well. So all 7 of us are here and ready to work. All right, item number 3, approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on November 16th, 2020. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes from that meeting? So only Dan, myself, Tom, and Arnett were at that meeting for comments. So Tom or Dan, do you want to make a motion on that?
Yes, I move that we accept the minutes from the November meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Tom, I'll take your second. That we approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on November 16th. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on November 16th, 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And new members, you can vote on this as well. So please vote aye or nay.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed vote no. The motion carries unanimously, and 7-0. We will approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on November 16th, 2020. Item number 4, approval of the financial reports. Richard, usually our treasurer does this, but since we do not have one at this time, would you like to take this item?
Sure, I'll just blame Julie for having bailed on us coming back. But, the report you have before you, since we did not have a December meeting, and a lot of that has the November and December information combined, so you were not viewing multiple sets of reports. The primary item that is separated is the actual versus budget and the balance sheet. Page 1 includes a brief summary of the total balances of the accounts. There's some notes at the bottom of page 1, including reference that the sales tax transfer of $61,541.64 for the month of January was received, and that will show on the upcoming report. On pages 2 and 3 are the December and November sales tax information. I do want to make specific mention, one of the notes on page 1, the MEDC had loaned the city a little over $750,000 in for a property purchase. The first payment has been made back to the MEDC from the city, and that will occur over a 12-month period. That payment was $63,052.03. I also want to note, if you notice in the investments on page 1, text pool where the primary investments are is paying 0.09%. It's still a positive amount. It's seeming to us internally that it's probably around bottom, but it is something we are still monitoring, on a continuing basis. We definitely don't want to see that move into a negative interest category. Something my economics professors taught me was theoretical and probably never ever happened. But then again, they said that about inverted yield curves, and I've seen that a few times in the last couple of years.
Right, and there are actually countries where short-term deposit rates are in fact negative. So
yes,
I believe in Switzerland and Austria are experiencing, or they have experienced over the last few years, that issue. Do you want to tell the new members what the city is borrowing, what rate at which the city is borrowing from the MEDC?
Yes, the loan rate is 1.5%, which places it a little bit below what the city could have otherwise borrowed, but well above what the MEDC is receiving, as I said in TextPool's case, 0.09%. So it's, and it's an investment that benefits the MEDC, and it also benefits the city by having to pay lower interest rates. So it benefits both parties, but I think it's definitely a good use of the MEDC funds for this year. It's for a maximum of a 12-month period, so it is not a long-term loan. So the MEDC will be getting its money back in monthly payments throughout the course of the year. And I suppose a couple other particular items I do want to make note of. There was a secondary amount, in the Kroger transfer. The monthly amount that was a transfer during the first month of the fiscal year was based on the previous fiscal year, so that was caught up. You'll see a duplicate entry, I believe, in the month of November on that, or not a duplicate entry, but a second entry amount. Also, find my notes here. On page 5 of the report, Southern Rum Runners and the Mudbugs and Music not to exceed amounts were updated in the budget. Those were approved at the meeting of November 16th. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to try to take those. If I'm not able to answer them, I'll follow up with the city's finance person and get back to you.
Richard, can I ask one question? What was the $750 used for? What property was it to purchase?
$750,000. It was used to purchase approximately, I forget the exact amount, I think it was approximately 4.7 acres. It's the land immediately to the east of the MISD, the old Montgomery Elementary School that's now the primary education center, on the Klepper side.
On the Klepper side, so behind them.
Well, it's on the Klepper side, but it's to the east of the backside of that property.
Okay.
It's essentially between that and the putt-putt golf course that's over there, but it's not all of the property in between those two.
And what was the purpose for that piece of property? Parking?
It's primarily for future use by the city. It hadn't been fully determined, or hadn't been given a final determination. One of the likely aspects of that was previously discussed is a potential future city hall. It will, parking will certainly be part of the long-term solution for that. The benefit of having over 4 acres of space is that you have options to do more than one thing. Yeah. I imagine it'll be used partly, at least, for recreation, partly for parking, partly for other municipal uses that may include a future city hall.
Great, thank you.
So over time, you may hear some different changes as plans work out. Just keep in mind it wasn't fully determined ahead of time.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll put that to the board for approval of the financial report.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the financial report as presented by Richard?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made to approve the financial report by Carol Langley, seconded by Jeff Angelo. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the financial reports as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve the financial reports as presented. Item number 5, recognition of outgoing MEDC directors.
Okay, the terms of Amy Brown, Julie Hutchison, and Bob Kerr all came to an end, and they've all served a significant time and purposes within the MEDC. I do want to also mention that the term ended for Rebecca Huss, who is continuing to serve with a reappointment to a new term. And so several proclamations of appreciation have been created for the EDC board president's signature and announcement.
So if I if the board will indulge me, I will read aloud. Proclamation of appreciation presented to Amy Brown. Whereas the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation was formed to promote the economic growth of the city and promote quality of life improvements for its residents, and the professional services provided by the board members to the corporation are integral to the success of meeting these missions. Whereas the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation has received the highest levels of dedication and commitment from Amy Brown during her years of service. Montgomery Economic Development Corporation Board, January 2017 through December 2020. Whereas Amy Brown provided the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation with invaluable knowledge about the rules under which a Type B EDC can operate. And whereas Amy Brown established new standards for minutes for the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation, which made it easier to understand past decisions and also keep outstanding items on the agenda. And whereas Amy Brown provided insightful analysis and thoughtful commentary on complex issues facing the board. Now, therefore, the MEDC Board of Directors, citizens, and staff wish to express their gratitude and appreciation for all your dedication and contributions to the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation, presented on this 19th day of January 2021. Thank you very much, Amy, for your service. We were very lucky to have her contributions to this board. She's incredible on the rules.
Okay, and I do believe I saw that she was on this call tonight.
She did join us right after we started.
Very much. Thank you.
If we could move forward to the next one, Julie Hutchinson. Proclamation of appreciation presented to Julie Hutchinson. Whereas the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation was formed to promote the economic growth of the city and promote quality of life improvements for its residents, and the professional services provided by the board members to the corporation are integral to the success of meeting these missions. Whereas the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation has received the highest levels of dedication and commitment from Julie Hutchinson during her years of service. Montgomery Economic Development Corporation Board, January 2019 through December 2020. Whereas Julie Hutchinson identified an important gap in the accounting for development agreements, obligations, and provided a solution which will allow the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation to accurately budget for its expenditures each year. And whereas Julie Hutchinson made accounting concepts accessible to all board members and replied to accounting questions with easy to understand answers, now therefore the MEDC Board of Directors, citizens, and staff wish to express their gratitude and appreciation for all your dedication and contributions to the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation, presented on this 19th day of January 2021. Thank you, Julie, very much for your help. I know she can't be on the call. She has a family emergency. Finally, but last but not least, please do look at Mr. Kerr's years of service. This is Montgomery Industrial Development Corporation Board, June 2010 through July 2013, and then Montgomery Economic Development Corporation Board, July 2013 through December 2020. His years of service are mighty indeed. Whereas the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation was formed to promote the economic growth of the city and promote quality of life improvements for its residents, and the professional services provided by the board members to the corporation are integral to the success of meeting these missions. Whereas the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation has received the highest levels of dedication and commitment from Bob Kerr during his years of service. Whereas Bob Kerr helped the board transition from a small budget entity to one that was able to contemplate large-scale projects and multi-year timelines. And whereas Bob Kerr provided forward thinking to the board as it looked at new ways to encourage visitors to come to Montgomery, encouraged accountability as it looked at how well its new ideas were performing, and brought an important perspective to the board as a longtime business owner in Montgomery and a longtime business resident. Now, therefore, the MEDC Board of Directors, citizens, and staff wish to express their gratitude and appreciation for all your dedication and contributions to the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation, presented on this 19th day of January 2021. thank you very much to all people who have served and continue to serve on this board. It's important work, so we really appreciate your time. All right. With your permission, we will move on to item number 6, the MEDC annual meeting items. Richard?
All right. Give me just a moment to get the ticker to place on my screen and try to make this easier if I can do that. My computer wasn't cooperating, but I think I've got it where I want to. I want to start with an overview of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. And can everyone see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. I had some issues trying to set this through PowerPoint, so I'm just going to roll through the PDF version of the slides. So maybe look a little less technical, but I can at least know I will get through it. The Montgomery Economic Development Corporation was originally organized as the Montgomery Industrial Development Corporation, as noted during Bob Kerr's proclamation earlier. It was created by a local election on May 6, 1995, had 41 votes in favor, 31 votes against. Its primary income, as dedicated by Ordinance 1995-4, is from sales tax. Overall, most people are aware that the city collects 2% sales tax on local sales. That's arranged as 1.5% of those sales to the city, 0.5% to the EDC. So effectively, the EDC collects 25% of all of the sales tax that is viewed as coming to the city. And that is the EDC's overwhelming primary income source. The other income sources that it collects money from include interest on investment accounts, and it has the ability to enter contracts that may result in payments to the EDC, but we don't have any in place at this moment. The history and standing of the EDC, we're managed by a 7-member board of directors. Those are comprised of a couple of requirements for positions. 2 are city council or mayor may also occupy that position, but 2 are from elected officials. At least 3 are required to have no specific tie to the city, meaning that it is not a member from the governing body or from the staff of the city. All members of the EDC board must be residents of Montgomery County, and the majority of members of the board must be residents of the city of Montgomery. There is an allowance for membership to allow that it may be for someone who's not a member, or sorry, not a resident of the city, but typically that would be reserved for someone who might have a significant economic impact, is why that person might be considered. The original use of the economic development sales tax was designed to help small and mid-sized cities compete for business investment dollars. In 1991, the state of Texas broadened the scope of use for economic development funds to include a greater number of uses, and we'll get into what some of those other categories might include in a little bit. Economic development primarily is the intentional practice of improving a community's well-being and quality of life. I feel like we have a comment from the gallery out there on that one.
Sorry, that was the hound.
That's okay. I've got one that tends to bark that way myself, and I've tried to pigeonhole myself in a way that you won't hear them. Economic development may include a broad range of activities designed to retain, create, and attract jobs and to foster the growth of a resilient tax base and an inclusive economy. So for the last 2 slides you've seen, we're talking about attraction of jobs, but also the practice of improving a community's well-being and quality of life. And those get to the core of much of what the MEDC does. Economic development is a collaborative effort. It involves, industries and businesses that are out in the community. It involves the government. It involves the stakeholders in the community. Technically, the MEDC is not a governmental body. It's a nonprofit corporation, but there are, because we're quasi-governmental, we do have to follow many of the guidelines of the law, such as the Texas Open Meetings Act. For those new directors here, I believe you've been given some of the education requirements to help get up to speed on those. Economic development infuses new dollars into a local economy through primary and non-primary employers. Primary jobs include jobs such as manufacturing, professional services, regional warehousing, and jobs such as that. Non-primary jobs include grocery stores, retail shopping, food service, restaurants. At the moment in Montgomery's development, you see a much larger concentration of non-primary jobs. It's not unusual for a smaller community that is going through growing efforts. The MEDC budget. Our fiscal year is October 1 through September 30th. The draft budget is prepared by the city administrator originally. It's ultimately adopted by the MEDC Board of Directors. There will be at least a budget hearing as well as a budget workshop at a minimum before it moves from the preparation through the adoption phase. Ultimately, the budget has to be approved by City Council in order to be fully effective. And in addition, for those who are not aware of this yet, expenses of $10,000 and greater from the MEDC must also be approved by City Council. The MEDC budget, as I mentioned before, the primary source of income is 0.5% sales tax collection, which is 1/4 of the city's sales tax revenue. The interest earned on investment and savings accounts, and if we had any contracts which brought money to our direction. In the expenditure categories, there's 5 primary categories, and our budget is organized around those. Category 1, public infrastructure. Category 2, business development and retention. Category 3, quality of life. Category 4, marketing and tourism. And Category 5, administration. Public infrastructure, the current items in this fiscal year budget in Category 1 include downtown development, design and planning. There's money budgeted for streets and sidewalk projects and utility extensions, should the proper circumstance come up to assist with business development with those. And also in this year's budget, there's current for city capital project contributions. The city is currently in the beginning phases of work on both a large-scale water utility line extension as well as improvements primarily at Water Plant 3. And there's some additional work along with those, but those are the primary work of those items. And part of the MEDC budget is committed funds to help pay towards that. In past years, the MEDC has also contributed money towards the city's debt service, but this year in the budget, that money was retasked to be directly towards improvement projects. Those projects will go to serve current and incoming businesses in developing capacity of those water infrastructure items.
Hey, Richard, I have a question on that.
Yes.
Developer agreements, are those primarily gone through the MEDC, or is that with the city, or is that through both? So yeah, go ahead.
It could be both.
Okay.
I've been with the city 18 months. We have not had a 380 type agreement come through in that time. There is in place 2 reimbursement agreements that do include sales tax that is currently in place. One is for the development area, the shopping center area where the Kroger is located. The other is for the shops of Montgomery, which is roughly across the street from Kroger. That is basically from where the Chick-fil-A is, and then go west a little bit past the Starbucks towards, but not as far as McCoy's.
Okay.
But historically, so I was around for both of the big ones, although there are a couple smaller ones prior. The city was the main driver, and the EDC was told that it would participate and at what amount, which has caused some hard feelings and changes in the way that the EDC participates. Something that Amy Brown had suggested, and I think that we've been very keen to put in place, is that if the president of the EDC is also a member of the governing body, then the vice president, or you kind of go down the row until you get to somebody who's not a member of the governing body, represents the EDC at negotiations, so that when you get to, so if the EDC is represented by itself and its own interests, and its own board makes the decisions on how much it wants to participate in projects.
But that's not currently in place right now.
Well, there are
We
two.
have not had, well, I was gonna say, we haven't had any big transactions come
Okay.
to the point where the city wanted to participate at all, or it became an issue for the EDC to participate alongside or not.
Okay.
But there are two agreements that are currently in process that were previously signed. And one of the ones that I mentioned, the first of those is a 15-year term agreement, and the second is a 10-year agreement. So those are both, I guess you could say, in process, and annual payments are made in reimbursements on those based on the contract.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. So in business development and retention category 2, you have the sales tax reimbursement agreements, which we were just touching upon. They're a set amount for a set period, and those two agreements are in place currently. The EDC may also award economic development grants. These can be direct to local businesses with grant funds to advance commercial revitalization efforts and/or increase city sales tax revenue through those revitalization efforts. Category 3, quality of life. These expenses do more than just improve the lifestyle of local residents. They also contribute to area tourism through events and attraction, helping with having destinations to get people into the area. This can be important to some employers when they're relocating operations or building new facilities. They're looking for opportunities for their employees to have more to do than just work and eat and sleep. Current fiscal year items include the Christmas parade, light up the park, and contributions to privately operated community events that may be open to the public. Two current ones that have been EDC has been in discussions with include Southern Rum Runners, who are planning in next year to have a craft beer food truck festival, and Charlie Diggs, who is planning the Montgomery Mudbugs and Music Festival. Each of those events were planned for 2020, but they were set aside due to the pandemic. The downtown design and enhancement projects, and removal of blight, may also, I'm sorry, not the downtown design enhancement projects. There may be minor projects that could be quality of life. A removal of blight can be a quality of life expense. The primary downtown design enhancement project, I believe, is a public infrastructure expense. Marketing and tourism. Expenses directly related to the marketing the city and its tourism-related opportunities. Current fiscal year item increased social media advertising to expand the organic audience reach. Social media is one area where the EDC had to retarget its efforts last year. Because of the pandemic, people weren't going out as much, and then they started to look for items to do traveling more locally. The easiest way for us to get a lot of that word out was through social media, as people were spending more time online through those venues and then looking for things to do locally. So in regards to that, we were trying to target our message to where where the audience was paying attention, and then letting them know that there were things to do in Montgomery, or at least what shopping opportunities there were. During the course of the year, most of the events that we had planned or had hoped would happen did not happen due to the pandemic, just like most places. Finally, at the end of the calendar year in December, we did have 2 events: the Light Up the Park on December 5th, the Christmas parade on December 12th. I think both of those were considered very successful at getting people out into the areas of those events, both people who are local to Montgomery and some from a little bit out. I do know from talking to some of the business owners, specifically following the parade, that there were a number of locations that did very good business following that parade. And category 5 of budget expenses fall under administration. Those are expenses include directly relating to the activities of the MEDC, include transfers to the city general fund for staff and office resources. Among those, is the time that's paid. City pays me a salary as city administrator, but I spend some of my time working on MEDC items. So it covers that, as well as other time that's spent on that. And professional consulting expenses also come out of that. Right now, those are primarily geared, right now most of ours are geared to social media, and so fall in that category, but there are other expenses that may fall within administration. And MEDC 2020 events, as I mentioned before, the COVID-19 pandemic caused the cancellation of events in the city that the MEDC would have participated in. The events that we did have were Light Up the Park and the Christmas parade. Some of the other events that we did not have our Flag Festival. We did not have our smaller event in June and July, but one that had a lot of fun the year before was the City Water Party. In short, it was obviously a disappointing year for events, but we did get to finish the year on a high note with 2 events in December. Tentative events for 2021. These are essentially the ones you see here, that we were hoping to do in 2020 as well. The Montgomery Mudbugs and Music Festival is slated for March. The local neighborhood water party for June or July. We have not yet identified a specific weekend. Planning will get started soon. The Craft Food Truck Festival, in October 2021. The Flag Festival is slated for I believe it's the first weekend in November 2021. And again in December, Light Up the Park and the Christmas parade. So we plan to resume this event involvement with a fairly full calendar. This is not necessarily inclusive of all events. There may be other events, or actually there will be other events that come up along the way as well. And social media. In 2020, as I said before, we worked to significantly expand the reach of the MEDC and the city's social media through Facebook and Instagram were the primary reaches for that one. During the course of the year where we changed the concentration, roughly starting in July through the end of December, we increased the city's social media followers on Facebook from approximately 2,800 through to 4,400. So I think we did a pretty good job in being able to increase that audience. And I know that number's gone up by at least 200 since the end of the year as well. Starting earlier this month, we're also putting additional emphasis on the Facebook pages for Fernland and the city's Public Works Department to highlight areas of specific interest that will go through those accounts. And one of the things we specifically did this year was develop the social media icon. You've seen it on every slide just as this presentation so far, the logo of the goat with the Texas flag. It was designed to symbolize 2 elements of the city history. One is obviously the city's history as the birthplace of the Texas flag. The second part of that is the story of the town goat from 1906. I think almost everyone, who would be here would be aware of the goat statue that's downtown and draws on the story of the town goat from 1906, who came into town and who stayed near the well and was given water by local residents, and who also was known to wander through bits of town and would be fed and watered. It's a story of generosity of the townspeople in providing for the goats. And thank you very much for going through this overview with me. I appreciate your patience and the questions that I had. This was my first time to really go through this, so I'm going to be hoping to fine tune this for future use and make improvements. If you have specific suggestions, I'd be happy if you would email those to me, as I will try to tailor that going forward. So thank you very much for that. So then next, I wanted to get to a more specific report on some of the items themselves. The goals we had outlined in January 2020 included, without knowing a pandemic was coming, but finalizing the historic downtown master plan, identify funding sources, and refine implementation plan. The work on the downtown planning was completed under the Texas Sea Grant, working with landscape architecture students at the university. Following that, the MEDC subsequently issued a request for qualifications for downtown development planning and selected Gunda Corporation for this work. The work will continue through most of the current fiscal year, and in upcoming meetings, we will be getting reports on that development or the progress for that implementation.
Although I don't think we've done much for identifying funding sources and refining implementation plans. So we might need to spend some more time on the funding sources part. That's a particularly important part.
That is certainly something we can look forward carrying in 2020. That was probably subject to, like with the pandemic, some of the things that didn't get fully carried forward. Fortunately, we carried forward with the parts that we did finish, and I will make notes following this that we look for continuing those elements of it in 2021.
No, I mean, finally getting the plan to this point is a huge accomplishment. I mean, it's been, ever since I was on council, this was supposed to be something that we wanted to have happen and wished would happen. So even being at this point, is amazing.
Is the Gunda Corporation contracted directly with the MEDC?
Yes.
And do we have their scope of work handy somewhere that we can look at?
I don't have it at my fingertips now, but I can certainly get that for you.
Okay. And I guess they don't have anything in their scope as far as identifying funding sources for this project? It's mostly just a plan, architect plan?
They specifically talked about, when we interviewed them, funding sources were an important part because they want us to actually do what they plan. So I don't think it's officially like a guarantee that we're going to get it, but they talked about some very specific things that they would consider, tailoring the project towards getting specific grants and funds.
Yeah, and I don't recall it being a part of the official scope, but it was something that, as the president stated there, they did bring forward, and they touted that they had experience with that and would expect to do that for the city to at least identify potential sources.
Right.
Okay.
Right, but we have the C grant. Walter is Walter, but we should be able to get additional assistance from him. We've got Gunda, who has, like I said, huge amounts of incentive for us to finish this project so that they can put it on our resume. I mean, I think that this is really a unique project for them. That would be a huge showcase. There's Houston Galveston Area Council. At the very least, I mean, I know we're not part of Texas Main Street, but we might look at whether that's an option, or if there's money there, whether we want to, go down that road just to get funding for it.
Okay.
And the next item was to continue to anticipate utility expansion projects and promote desirable downtown business development within the city. There were no specific utility projects that came forward for this item. The intent was that if a certain developer need or business need was coming forward into the city, that the EDC had those funds available to coordinate. I think that's something that EDC should always be considering as a potential option, whereas not every necessarily every agreement with a developer might need to be a tax reimbursement. It may be that the EDC is helping to get some of the work done, whether maybe it'll be road work, maybe it'll be water line or wastewater line or lift station that can help work with those businesses, beyond the side of, some of the work that was done, for instance, for the shops of Montgomery included, work that relocated a wastewater line, lift station, so that land could be utilized for that development to go in place because it has the city's wastewater plant relatively close by, and that line went right through the property, I believe, where Chick-fil-A is now occupied.
Yeah. Well, again, back to what our plans are, this could be the option for, all the work that has to happen, above ground. We know that there's a significant amount that has to happen below ground as well, for the timing that we need to work back from or towards, there's a lot of money and a lot of planning that has to go to be choreographed to make, our downtown redevelopment plan work.
Right.
And a lot of.
And we do know within the downtown redevelopment, there will be a need to increase water line capacity, possibly also the need to move water lines, wastewater lines, and street work. So those are all known that will have to be available. So
Right.
the perfect assignment to this category.
Right. And my favorite dream would be utilities underground and somewhere else besides 149, electric utilities.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be a huge improvement.
The number 3 item was to add a marketing and tourism coordinator to staff and to have them help develop strategic planning for enhancing business climate in the city and attracting more visitors to the area. We did add that position, and then ultimately that position ended up being laid off and is terminated. Because that position was the only city position paid entirely by sales tax revenue, and that was done early in the days of the pandemic, when there was a lot more economic uncertainty. It was after that that we retooled, as I said earlier, into our marketing and tourism efforts, moved primarily to a strong social media push. And so that was a direction that the COVID-19 pandemic caused us to take a U-turn and then redirect in a different direction. As I mentioned before, we've grown significantly the city's follower reach, in the EDC's reach in social media in order to help attract more visitors to the city. Attracting those visitors to the city means attracted also to the city businesses. Once they're at those businesses, they spend additional money, so that promotes the city's economy and drives sales tax revenue.
On the social media front, have we ever considered consulting with someone or hiring a consultant to handle the social media push for us?
We actually do that now.
That's what we're doing now. Okay.
Yeah, so that's not handled directly by staff at this time.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Develop the calendar. Number 4, develop the calendar of events for 2020. We did develop a fairly full calendar, and then the COVID-19 pandemic caused the cancellation of most of it. As I said earlier, the Light Up the Park on December 5th and the Christmas Parade on December 12th were successfully held later in the year. Some other items that weren't planned for at that time but came up during the year. The MEDC purchased radios to be used during events to assist police department and event organization in communication. Those were successfully used during the Christmas parade. In addition, the MEDC began a program, as I mentioned earlier, to develop a social media icon. Well, we also are working on bringing that forward with essentially life-size figures with plywood goats. And we have availability for local businesses to apply to decorate and display those. At the moment, we've only had one business so far carry forward all the way with getting that checked out, but there have been a couple other businesses express some interest. And we are coordinating with several of the goat naming contest winners that we held with MISD and other local schools into bringing some of those versions to life, where essentially those art winners will be developing what they developed on paper and putting that on the plywood goat for the city to display throughout town.
Richard, I'm sorry, I just wanted to interject. I'm wondering how many people actually know anything about the goat. I know we obviously do, but I'm wondering if even, it seems like it'd be more fun, maybe even to get the elementary schools involved or to get the story out a little more, because to be honest with you, this is the first time I'd heard the entire story. So
Okay.
I think it's it's really neat. I didn't know that it was all about generosity. I'm just thinking it's a goat that's set by the well. So I'm just wondering, is there maybe, I don't know, just a way to I don't think people really understand it. I certainly don't. I've been here forever. So I don't know. Maybe maybe it's just me. I may be naive. I don't know.
Well, that's always the nature of of education campaigns with the public. You can only educate the people who are in a position to receive your message. We've done a lot of push on this through social media, but that does only go so far. First, people have to be engaged with our account, and then they have to actually look at and read those posts. With the elementary schools, with the naming contest, the history component was part of that, and that was something that was brought to all those students through the schools. So we're working on that there.
Is it part of the 7th grade project as well? Just out of curiosity, Miss Blevins' project?
That particular part was not. What we did that just wrapped up in December was part of, was targeted to elementary schools. We're certainly open towards reaching out to that higher level. There was some very initial discussion of that with MISD. It just wasn't, it wasn't the direction to go with that initial part, but it is something we hope to circle back on with them.
Okay.
So we got about 1,200 entries back from MISD. So, and that included the goat story, although it was sanitized. The goat was not drinking beer at the saloon. He was being fed from grocery stores. So it was a little bit sanitized to the appropriate age group, but we got, sorry?
Did the goat like beer originally, right?
I believe so, yes.
I'm wondering if it was any particular brand that's still around. Maybe we could get them to relocate.
Well, we have been joking about the icon being licensed to Lone Star Beer, and whether that would be an appropriate use of the icon or whether that would, that would just not be acceptable. But
right,
you never know. We'll cross that bridge, that $1 million bridge, when we get to it.
Just wondering if it's really there's this much of a push to try to bring awareness, because it begs the question, why does the city have a goat for a mascot? Maybe we should actually have a goat mascot that is at some of these events, that maybe hands out, information or disseminates some information about the city. Children love, things in costumes, and so do adults for that matter. But I don't know, just throwing, I know maybe this isn't the space for new ideas just yet, but I just didn't know anything about the goat. And so it's intriguing.
Well, I think we now know where to turn for our next volunteer.
As long as there's a fan in the helmet.
Tights and a cape for sure.
Anyway, that's just, I just think it's so cool. The first question that comes to mind is, why does the city have a goat and then, answering that question in some engaging way might be, I don't know. I love the fact that it was all about being a warm community. That really is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, too, one observation to that point, there are people I've talked to with this that, they say, well, I've been in Montgomery for, 10, 20 or more years, and they weren't familiar with the story. And then almost every time I have that conversation, I have someone else shortly after or before who said they've been in Montgomery for 3 or 4 weeks, and the first thing they saw was the goat statue downtown, and they stopped and read the story. So there are people on both sides of that. I think no matter what we do, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't hear the message. But on the other hand, there's certainly more people out there, who haven't heard it yet.
I just think I'm more intrigued by the message behind the goat, which is the warmth of the community, which is outstanding here. I mean, people say it all the time. They come in and they go, "We've never met such nice people." And I know that's kind of Texans in general, but especially Southern Texans and Southeast Texas for sure. It just bears, I think if you really want to get that message out, there might be some way to, people like to go where there's nice people. That tends to be, I know I do. And so I don't know, I didn't mean to interject too much. I know it's a long meeting anyway, but I just wanted to understand it a little better. If that's kind of the bedrock that the logo is very important. It's a part of, you're the face of the community for us anyway, and how we can capitalize on that a bit more. But anyway, I'll sit back again. Sorry.
Right. And it's difficult to know how much of a blitz to do. And, doing stuff with the kids is great. Our old pediatrician had a really successful immunization campaign by enlisting third graders. He said there's nothing so annoying as a third grader who knows more than their parents. So, by educating that level of elementary kids who, tell their parents something that they don't know, that's actually, I think, an effective way to start spreading things out. So you're right, other things that the kids know rather than necessarily pounding it through, just the social media channel, capture the kids' imaginations and see if we can do other kid-related activities related to the goat, not necessarily with the school. The school district is open. We've talked to them about doing something different every year. And I think if we did goat things every year, it might get a little bit dull. We've got some other ideas, and we're never going to do something with them in December again. Having 3 big events in December was a little bit much, but, start getting in the habit of doing something related to our history with, the group that at the 4th grade level, because they've got the 7th grade project, which is fantastic, but 4th grade has Texas history too, and it's not nearly as related to our local history.
Yeah,
I think that's what I'd like to partner.
It's so much fun because it's like the Chick-fil-A, cow. Every time you see the Chick-fil-A cow, that's the Chick-fil-A cow. And so building a message around an icon, and especially something as familiar as an animal like a goat, but a goat, wearing Texas outfit is just so it's endearing. I mean, it's remarkably endearing, and you're like, why does the goat have the Texas outfit? And it's because of the story. And anyway, I never knew the connection till tonight.
Is there a website or somewhere on the city website that talks about the goat at all?
No, but we should add it.
Yeah, because if you have these, plywood signs or pictures of it, you could put a QR code, and someone could just take a picture of it and be sent.
Great idea. Yeah.
To the web page with the information immediately there. So,
Richard, why don't you put that on our list of 2021 goals so we hold ourselves to it?
We'll pencil that in while we're speaking, and I like that idea. Thank you.
One of the things that I would like to do for 2021 is get our district tour on our website, because I think that districts, you have to be here, and I'm not sure, the district thing kind of bothers me anyway, because it's another app. People, I think, are done with apps. Like once you get 5 screenfuls of apps, you just don't want to add another one. So I'd like to change the stuff over to QR codes like you mentioned, and also have that as another thing. So you don't have to look at districts in order to get the benefit. And so, use the QR codes, link back to our webpage, so you can go from Magnolia House to the Chilton Dean House to, downtown to see the goat to, from here to here to here without using the district's app. So I mean, I'd like to start doing that.
Just one more thing, Becky. When we do the Big Texas Flag Festival, I know a lot of businesses participate in that, and it's really good. But the goat should be right there in the center of all of that, and maybe like what Ryan said, to have the actual QR code so that when people do pop up and they see all these Texas flags, and there's the goat, it's like, why is there a goat in the middle of all these Texas flags? It just begs the question. Because it's a subliminal message of who we are as a community, and I think you could have people decorate the goats. I mean, you can have businesses compete, almost like the city light up contest, or where you could have some fun with that. Really.
Well, I mean, as this goes on, there's some crazy ideas, some normal ideas, and some like maybe just regular extreme ideas of you know, like see all the goats, have your picture taken with the goats, and get a prize. The goats got lost, you know, do you know where they all belong? You know, find out where they are, where do they all go? Richard wants a goat float in every parade now, where all of the cars have a, you know, again, though, it's kind of, and every time you do something like this, you redo the message of why, and, you know, what's the birthplace of the Texas flag, our hospitality, and that sort of thing. And then the more the plywood cutouts get used, eventually you get do you know the Chicago Cows on Parade?
No.
So I want to say back in the 90s, they did these big, it wasn't plaster of Paris, but similar cows, and artists decorated them, and they were all over the city.
I am familiar.
And then they auctioned them off at the end, and so now they're all over everywhere. But I mean, that is a very large undertaking. They're probably about $300 a piece themselves just to acquire. But then you pay the artists the stipend and to decorate it, because the materials that they use, you want it to be like not just magic markers. You want it to be nice, and you need to find the artists. And I mean, it's a big, big undertaking, and people need to be ready. But then once you have these amazing public art pieces all over your city as well, that becomes another thing. So.
Well,
you know,
it just seems like to me like we put a lot of faith in this particular icon, and if we're gonna do it, maybe just blow it up so people can see it a bit better. That's all I was thinking, because it's got. I love the goat quote. I mean, that's just hysterical right there. Anyway, my mind's racing, but let's keep going, and I'll
I was gonna say, there's definitely room in this goat craziness to for lots of people and their ideas.
Yeah.
And you can always look up, I think it's near Green Bay, there's like a restaurant with a grass roof, and they have a camera on it, and their goats get up there, and it's like thousands of people come to look at their goats on the roof.
Tom, I know you'd be happy putting the grass roof up, right?
What's that?
You don't mind putting a grass roof on the cozy, do you?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
It might be good for your electricity bills. Those sod houses are good for heat elimination.
Yes, the ultimate going green, right? All right, I'll sit back.
Okay, and just a couple of things.
I know, right? Like, how do you get back on track after that?
I guess I'll try. I know I'm going on a bit about 2020. I'll try to speed up a bit. You've got a couple pages in the book tonight on a summary of Light Up the Park. I won't read it word for word, but I do want to cover some particular points that this was the first thing we were able to do against the background of the pandemic. We did change the way we can light up the park, try to make it more workable and more friendly in the light of the pandemic. We believe we had, we know we had several hundred, I think somewhere between 500, 700 people total attend at least one part of that. One of the things we did this year, we instituted a fee of $25 for the prime spots for pole decorating at the park. Those were the ones along the 105 frontage road to help defray some of our expenses, that we have. And of the 47 poles in the park, 45 out of those 47 were reserved for decoration, which was the most that had been done since the pole decorating had started. And all of the ones that had a $25 fee on them were taken as well. So, and we had a lot of businesses also participate in that this year. And so, we were very happy with how that went. There was the, Santa made an appearance, and there was an adjustment into how, Santa met with the children with the help of his elves there with regards to, our pandemic lifestyle at the moment. There were 75 letter writers, that left a letter for Santa and then received replies back. And we had 300 items or gifts that were out for children, which included cookies provided by Chick-fil-A, as well as 8-ounce cups that have the GOAT logo with Montgomery, Texas. And those were all taken. I think the report I had afterwards was 1 cup was found left in the park the next morning. So obviously those were desired and taken with them. There is a, in the packet there's a budget versus actual for the expenditure categories. And I believe we were over on expenses by about $138. So we were, I think, pretty close on that one. With the Christmas parade, again, I felt we had a very successful Christmas parade in many ways similar to last year. We had to make some changes in preparation for the pandemic, but at least largely with the parade, it's a stretched out in a activity that is, has spacing built into it. We relied on visual attendees to help space themselves out along the route. We helped realize just how long that route was, and largely speaking, I think people attended the parade in a way that they felt comfortable doing, and included to help with the security and the safety of the event was not just Montgomery Police Department. It included officers from the MISD Police Department, deputies from Precinct 1 Constable, in addition, as well as we had 2 fire trucks from ESD 1 working with us, and Montgomery Public Works had several personnel rounding out the people who were working on the parade this year for the city. We had a route that went in and out through the downtown area, and we did have a couple of last-minute pullouts since both Lake Creek High School and Montgomery High School, they had activities that their bands had to participate in, so their bands were not able to. One had a UIL competition that they qualified for, and the other was, that band went to the high school playoff since both teams were in the playoffs that weekend. So overall, also there's an actual budget that's provided in the item that was, or in the book that was presented to you. Moving on to 2021 goals, the ones that I've lined out so far as a starting point, continue the work on downtown development planning. Gunda Corporation is in the beginning stages of the work to take the concepts received from the Texas A&M students and work with city staff and stakeholders in a process to provide plans for downtown improvements and development. Their work should conclude late summer and then be ready to move towards a design development phase later. And I can go ahead and take the comments that we discussed earlier of the part that did not move forward related to funding opportunities search and loop that back in for 2021. Again, like last year, be available to participate in utility and road extensions or similar projects that might help attract desirable businesses and or tourism opportunities into the city. Number 3, again, is develop a calendar of events. This obviously will be highly dependent on COVID-19 response, and if there's any future shutdowns or limits to gatherings. Mudbugs and Music Festival, I'm getting ready to rekindle that conversation if that's going to happen in March, and I know the promoter from my last conversation is hoping to put that on. The Craft Beer and Food Truck Festival is slated for October. The MEDC and city events that are likely this year include the City Water Party, the Flag Festival, Light Up the Park, and the Christmas Parade. Other events in the area put on by other groups include the Antiques Festival and the Wine and Music Festival. And again, this is not necessarily an exhaustive list as other things come up. And number 4, respond to a changing environment in both attracting business and marketing and tourism efforts. Our exploration through social media in the last half year, I think, has been very successful. A lot of businesses, from what we've seen, there was initial pause that came in the early days of the pandemic, but then businesses that were under construction, they came back and then they continued through their construction. There are some that essentially, one is Panda Express, seem to be on a much longer pause, but they've come back to the city to be ready to move forward with their construction location. The way some of these businesses may have to change how they do business, especially in food service, may mean that there's opportunities that might come forward for us. I just think we should be ready to respond in a way that we might not have done before because it might be appropriate in the future. And then number 5, which was mentioned earlier, getting more information, the story of the Montgomery goat on the website and additional information related to that. I think that's definitely a good add to the list.
I think maybe we should really talk about deepening the, I don't know if you'd say market penetration, but basically deepening the community's knowledge of the goat story as it relates to the friendliness and hospitality of our city is an important part of what Jeff was talking about. Making sure that it's not just where we put the information, but how we convey it.
Certainly.
And I think,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, and maybe a second part or number 6, what Ryan was talking about is develop a system for how to use QR codes and get them out. We have money in our budget for FY21 to do historical signage. And so, like I said, I've been thinking about using QR codes with districts, but using QR codes generally to make it easy to access our website. So, having the goat on our website is great, but figuring out how to use the QR codes, how to put them out and making them accessible to people along with the goat and districts.
Yeah, and the QR code is a simple technology a lot of people know how to use and is readily accessible to almost everyone who has a smartphone these days.
Right, and it seems like people are using it more now since we're not allowed to touch anything. Everyone says, point your camera at this, and the QR code is important.
Right.
So the real question is, I think, what QR codes do we use that are more permanent? Because I think a lot of people get a QR code and then it disappears, and we can't be in a situation where we make a sign with a QR code and either it costs us, a ridiculous, $200 a month to keep our QR code, or somebody else takes it later. So we need to have our research done on what system we want to use if we get into this QR code stuff.
But certainly there has to be a solution out there that would be appropriate for us.
Yeah.
So I think those are definitely good adds to the list. And
Jeff, you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
I can see that. Okay, now I'm not, I don't think. Sorry. The thing I was thinking about is that if we did put on a QR code, rather than just go directly to, the story itself, maybe they could submit an email address, agree to a text message or a phone number, so that we could start to build a database that might that we could send out early adopter opportunities for these events that we have coming up. So, you know, in other words, make it compelling to see the story, but get something forward in the process, such as a database of names, and, you know, and bring, it's not enough just to bring people in. You want to build them up while they're there and then bring them back, you know, somehow, if it's possible to bring them back. So restaurants, other businesses can participate in, you know, sponsoring or you know, coupons and things like that. It's just so easy to do stuff like that nowadays with QR codes. But my thought was just build a database, and the more people we bring in, the better the chances are we can get them back, especially with events. If we get,
Right.
you know, it's like this Mudbug Festival. I mean, I didn't even know it was coming. It's March. I mean, we're already planning March of 2022 right now. So to just talk, no businesses are going to be ready for March if you throw it in. I mean, February is now pretty much. We're already past March. So
Right.
we need to know these businesses. I think we need to highlight our businesses and let them know early on, so they can have an opportunity to really capitalize, to maximize it. I don't even know where it might be. Is it going to be at Ransom's? Is it going to be in the big field off by the fire station? I mean, they've talked about different places, but how can we get a little bit more of a heads up? And I know pandemic has given some pause, but anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Yeah.
Right. Plus, then we aren't hostage to what Facebook is doing with their algorithms and things like that. And there's been a big variation in terms of how easy it is to reach people over the last year.
Exactly. I mean, there's some ways around that too, you know, but having a good social media company, I don't know who we're using, but a good marketing company that does understand, you know, the rules, the regulations, and how to, you know, how to circumvent some of these, you know, migrate some of these little quirks. Facebook and Google, they're always changing. So it's just you need a good social media company that has the ability to migrate those and tread those waters. Who are we using, Richard?
I'm sorry.
Right now it's me.
Yeah.
Right now it's me, Jeff. It's been most of the social media content has been put together by me because it's been very specific to the city.
With this, I'm just wondering if the city might be interested in taking a look at some of the we have local businesses in our community that have tremendous abilities to push our social media message out for very little, you know, cost. So I don't know if there's any budget line items for that, but that might be something to dig into, so that you're not having to, you know, oh gosh, I need to schedule a post or whatever. And you know, we found it to be very effective. So I think it's having a group or somebody that can help us out and that understands, you know, how to make the most out of our website, looking at the website and getting, that's where we don't want, I wouldn't think, we don't want just, you know, 80 somethings coming. We want young 30, 40 young families, and to grab their attention, you better have a great website that's mobile friendly and has some compelling messages that can keep their attention for more than 10 seconds. So anyway, but yeah, is that something that I'd be happy to look into?
Well,
Yeah,
Jeff,
I think that, yeah, you should send Richard the people that you work with for sure.
Okay.
yeah, and Jeff, I can circle back with you between meetings here and you know, and compare notes with you, and obviously you have some enthusiasm for the items, so you and I have a rather animated conversation.
Well, it's always
multiple items.
Yeah, the marketing is just is everything. You know, if we're not selling ourselves and getting out there and letting people know that we have all these events. I mean, the parade was amazing to me that it was even that well attended. But and we had a lot of challenges going into that. But I'll give you an example. The Halloween event, which I don't think is a city event, but my gosh, I mean, we had thousands of people. We literally gave out 3,000 bags of candied corn and everything else. It was amazing. And I can't tell you how many people came back after and said they didn't even know we were there. So things like that, it's all about getting them in, building them up, bringing them back in somehow. And anyway, but I will. I'll leave this for now, and Richard, I'll circle back with you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
All right.
No, for sure. Taking advantage of people with specific knowledge and skill sets who are willing to share is an important part of, what the board is about, because everyone has things they're good at. And it's great that you're enthusiastic and willing to share your secret sauce.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, we definitely enjoy putting people to work who have the enthusiasm and the desire, and as the president was just saying there, everyone comes to this board with different abilities, different talents. It's why there's a board of 7 people. It's meant to draw from a multiple of areas.
We'll call Jeff. Jeff is our new MacGyver.
I don't know, but I'm the new goat.
I like that. I like that. I like your excitement, man.
Yeah. Okay, so in any case, that gives us 6 primary targets as goals for 2021, and that we can work forward on. And by all means, that doesn't mean there's other things we can't develop throughout the year going forward. As we learned last year, plans can be turned on their head and changed in the midst of the year. So if we have to react accordingly, we'll do it again in 2021. Hopefully any major change this year means going back more towards previous normal and not farther away from it.
Sure.
Right. Well, I think it's important to note that despite our, extreme worries at the beginning in March and April, the year has not turned out as badly for our sales tax generating companies as it could have been.
For sure.
Yeah, no, we definitely through the pandemic thought we were going to be taking a big hit. And while we did have a slowdown in the early days of it, the versatility of the local economy came through, that we stayed on target and in some cases exceeded previous projections on sales tax. So I think that's the testament to a lot of businesses in the local community.
Absolutely.
And continuing forward on the annual agenda in the annual financial report, just a couple items I want to note here. We're showing actuals versus budget for the years. This is presented in the format, but because that's our financial reporting for 2018 to 19, actual and adopted, 2019 to 20, actual and adopted, and the 2020 to 21 adopted budget. In the midst of the quality of life category 3 for the 2019 to 2020, you'll notice that there were not a lot of events that were allocated for. The intent of the budget was that there was a larger sum that was put in events, and those were going to be allocated out during the course of the year. When those events were not happening, that money was just not allocated because it wasn't needed for that. Largely the similar was done for for the current fiscal year. So you've heard the name of some of those items without having money allocated. The intent was to allocate that as the year went on. And so then having less expenses than anticipated for the year 2019 to 2020, did mean we ended up with more of a surplus for the year, largely due to unspent revenue. And if anyone has some questions on those, again, if nothing I can answer, I'll get with the city's financial person and circle back to you. Otherwise, that takes us to the next item on the annual agenda, which I believe is the election of officers for the year.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Richard, for all of that. I think
You're
that
welcome.
that was quite a lot of information for us, a relatively short period of time. Did anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask Richard for that before we move on? Okay.
Let me give my voice a break for a moment.
Yes, exactly. So we have 4 officers rather. We have the secretary, the treasurer, the vice president, and the president. And we re-elect people for these offices at every annual meeting. The treasurer last year was Julie Hutchison, and as you might recall from the previous reading, she is no longer on the MEDC, and the secretary was Amy Brown, and she is also no longer on the MEDC. The vice president position is currently held by Dan Walker, and I'm not just bossy, I'm actually the president, which is why I'm presiding over the meeting. But again, all of these are up for election. And let's take it from the secretary position. The way that I'd like to handle this, if possible, is I will hear nominations for each position. And if you are nominated, I will ask if you would like to serve. And then we will, once the nominations are closed, then we will vote. And then we will find out who is the position holder. So for secretary, I will open the floor for nominations.
Nominate Jeff.
Jeff, would you consent to serve as secretary?
I would prefer not to serve as an officer. This my first time around, my first tenure, and the main reason is because I don't understand the process just yet. I'm perfectly willing to do anything and everything whenever asked, but I would like to try to sit back this time and just kind of I'm not a great secretary, to be honest with you. I'm more of a big picture person, and I would be best served, supporting the team.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Ryan, would you be interested in being secretary? May I nominate you?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any other nominations for the position of secretary? All right, I will consider the nominations closed, and congratulations, Ryan. You are the new secretary of the MEDC. Unfortunately, since I haven't seen your pencil going like crazy, these meetings are being recorded, so you may go back and listen to them and watch them to catch up for the official minutes. All right, opening the
nominations for treasurer.
Would
I would
anyone like to
nominate-
make a nomination?
I would nominate
I'm sorry, Dan, who did you nominate?
Carol.
Carol, do you consent to be treasurer?
Yes.
All right, are there any other nominations for the position of treasurer? All right, then I consider the nominations closed, and Carol is the new treasurer of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. The position of vice president, are there any nominations?
I would
Dan.
nominate Annette.
Dan.
Arnett.
Okay, so Dan and Arnett have nominated each other. Dan, would you accept being the position of vice president? I'm sorry, yes? Dan, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. You were talking. I thought you were talking to Arnett.
Oh, no, I was talking to you. Do you accept the nomination for the position of vice president?
I would actually like to stand down for this end of this term, just to kind of participate a little bit more
Okay.
with my load.
Okay, Arnett, do you accept the nomination of vice president?
Yes.
Would anyone else like to nominate anyone for this position? Then I consider the motions closed, and congratulations, Arnett, you are the vice president of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. Position of president. I open the nominations.
I nominate you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I second his nomination.
Thank you very much. If there are no other nominations, I consider the nominations closed, and I will return as the president of the Economic Development Corporation. Thank you very much for your faith in me. The election of the officers is concluded with Rebecca Huss as the president, Arnett Easley as the vice president, Carol Langley as the treasurer, and Ryan Lundeen as the secretary. Thank you very much for everyone who is willing to serve. That moves us to item number F on the MEDC annual meeting items. Richard, would you like to handle that?
Yes, we're going to, with the changes of directors as well as with some coming on, some going off, one of our annual items we need to do is to take care of addressing these signers on our accounts. What I would like to propose is that have a resolution drawn up by our banking entity that contains the signature, or that the signers would be each of the 4 officers and myself as the city administrator. That would be Rebecca Huss, Arnett Easley, Carol Langley, Ryan Lundeen, and Richard Tram as the signers. Our policy is that there must be 2 signatures on any check, and we avoid, if for some reason a check is being made out as a reimbursement or other item to one of the signers, such as if it was reimbursing me, then I would not sign that check until I get 2 other signers to do it. So there's not a driving need that you always be available. Checks are typically signed on Fridays. It's rare that there's something urgent that they have to have something signed the same day. So, and again, that's also one of the reasons why I'd have multiple signers, is so there's people to spread this out among. So that would be my recommendation, is to have those 5, if I could get the EDC board approval for that.
If I may then, I would like to approve by resolution Arnett Easley, Ryan Lundeen, Carol Langley, Rebecca Huss, and Richard Tran to be the signatories of the bank accounts for the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. If that covers it, Richard?
It does, thank you.
But I do need a second.
Oh, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Dan. It has been moved and seconded that we approve by resolution Arnett Easley, Ryan Lundeen, Carol Langley, Rebecca Huss, and Richard Tram to be the signatories of the bank accounts for the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously, and we approve by resolution that Arnett Easley, Ryan Lundeen, Carol Langley, Rebecca Huss, and Richard Tram to be the signatories of the bank accounts for the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. I believe, unless there are any other items, that this marks the end of our annual meeting items.
It does.
Okay.
And
Now, items number 7.
I just want
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'd just like to mention that Ryan had dropped off, and I'm admitting him back into the meeting here.
Okay. He did send a chat to all of us that he's having internet issues.
Yep. And it looks like Arnett dropped off right about the same time. I do not see at the moment that he's trying to get back in, but
Okay.
when he does, I will admit him.
I think I got back in. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, Ryan.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Ryan, did you vote for the signatories of the bank account?
I did not.
So just to be safe, Richard, on when everyone dropped off, let's just note that for sure it was a 5-0 vote with Jeff, myself, Tom, Dan, and Carol. And Ryan and Arnett Ryan definitely missed it, and Arnett may or may not have. But that's still a majority. Well, that's a unanimity of a quorum.
Yes, that is sufficient.
Sorry, Ryan, after bathroom gate, we know that you can't go back and revote. So it's a done deal.
Okay.
But I'm sure you would have voted to be able to sign checks anyway. Okay, items number 7 and 8. Richard, do you want to give the background on this information?
Yes, and I also have some additional information to add to both of these from what was presented previously. These are both for items 7 and 8. These are for the economic development grants were applied for. In conversation with our city attorney late last week, and then some research that he put into it after that conversation, is that grant items such as these, unless they fall into a fairly narrow category, they need to be read twice at 2 separate MEDC meetings, and they also need to be subjected to having a public hearing. So what we would need to do tonight for both 7 and 8 is to read through the agenda items. I can give a brief overview of them. Call a public hearing that'll be held on the date of our next MEDC meeting. That I believe is February 16th is the scheduled date for that, which is the day after President's Day. And we will also then add that item to the agenda where it can be discussed and considered for up or down approval, having met the requirement of being on 2 EDC agendas as well as in a public hearing. With that, Madam President, would you like me to go through the details for each individual item?
I don't think that we need to, since that neither of the applicants is here, and things may change given that when we hear from the public.
Okay.
I think it's, it will drag a long meeting on quite a bit longer.
Right. Okay, let me just add for the record, I did notify each of them of the change so that there would not be action tonight because of those situations. I did receive a reply back from one of them on the one regarding the cemetery. The other day, I did not get the reply, but I did send that out, and I assume their lack of presence here is the receipt of that, because I know they had previously, my understanding is they had previously intended to be here when it had been considered.
That sounds good. So to recap, we need to call a public hearing for February 16th. That's the only action that the board needs to take.
I just read the agenda item so it can be counted as read, and then the action item to call a public hearing for it, and then that's for each of the items. Okay.
Item number 7, consideration of economic development grant from Troy Tep LLC for a sign at 22453 FM 1097, and consider calling a public hearing if necessary. I'll make a motion to call a public hearing for February 16th, 2021 via Zoom.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded that we call a public hearing for February 16th via Zoom. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor that we call a public hearing for February 16th regarding the economic development grant for Troy Tep LLC for a sign at 22453 FM 1097, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will call a public hearing for February 16th, 2021 via Zoom for the economic development grant from Troy Tep LLC for a sign at 22453 FM 1097. Item number 8, consideration of economic development grant from Montgomery Historical Society regarding Old Montgomery Cemetery improvements, and consider calling a public hearing if necessary.
I make a motion for a public hearing on the 16th.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we call a public hearing on February 16th for the economic development grant from Montgomery Historical Society regarding Old Montgomery Cemetery improvements. This motion is debatable, amended on February 16th. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of the motion that we call a public hearing for the economic development grant from Montgomery Historical Society regarding Old Montgomery Cemetery improvements, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will call a public hearing for February 16th via Zoom for the Economic Development Grant from Montgomery Historical Society regarding Old Montgomery Cemetery improvements. All right, item number 9. Richard, it's you again.
Okay, thank you for letting me at least have a few moments of resting my voice. With the development report, like when I started, during the pandemic months of making notes of COVID-19, I didn't realize that we'd be almost a year into it, and I would still be opening the reports with that. But for items that are ongoing on the commercial development on the east side of the city, in the shops of Montgomery area, that area is particularly active. Recent openings include the Chipotle, Ruthie Grace Boutique, and Hotworks Fitness Studio. AutoZone is expected to begin construction in that area fairly soon, and Panda Express has submitted plans for review. And those are, the Panda Express will be located on the pad site to the west of the Starbucks location. That construction is, I guess it's fairly close to the end on that one. In residential development, we have 68 new homes that were completed in 2020. That's an average of almost 6 a month, and that's based on city's permitting records. 1 was completed in November, 4 were completed in December. Those numbers at the end of the year are fairly typical, with construction tends to slow down. There are also 10 new single-family home permits issued during November and December. So those builders obviously plan to continue to pick up in 2021 where they left off in 2020. Home construction did not slow down quite as much as the commercial construction did at the early part of the pandemic, but there was some slowdown with it. But we do have homes going and planning in a number of parts of the city. The Hills of Town Creek subdivision, which is on the west side of the town, has a total of 100 single-family home sites. 62 were complete, 22 under construction, 16 available lots at this time. And a new 30-lot section has been approved, and site development for work is underway for roads and utilities. The Eagles Nest Apartments, formerly the Montgomery Townhomes, in this report is underway in a 48-unit complex along Ples Morgan Drive. Construction will be should begin early September of this year on the buildings. Terra Vista subdivision, 61 single-family home sites along 1097 northeast of Waterstone. 44 homes are complete, 5 are under construction, and 12 lots remain available. And the Town Creek Crossing area, this addition is to the Buffalo Springs planned development, includes 199 residential home sites, 8 commercial reserves. Land planning and engineering work are underway. If you've driven by that area, you'll notice essentially dirt has been turned on virtually all of that property fairly recently.
Okay, Richard, when does the city expect to get back their feasibility study on the Camera property?
I'm still waiting on an update for that, but I believe that will probably be within the next several weeks.
Okay.
I don't expect it to be back for this next city council meeting, but certainly I expect it to be back unless there's some change by the late meeting in February. And the camera track, for those who are not aware, is on the west side of the city, south of 105. It is was approximately 400 acres, I believe, partly in the city, mostly out of the city. It has the potential to develop into ultimately to potentially 400 or more homes in that area.
What's the crossroads on the property?
If you know where Montgomery High School is, it's approximately just south of that. It's for me to refer to that.
Behind the old Giles sawmill?
No, it's Womack Cemetery, Old Plantersville, and Old Plantersville.
That's the piece of property that has potential issues with water pressure. Is that No, it's not.
Well, they don't have any water right now.
All right. Well, that would be part of the feasibility. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, the city has currently a project that is just kicking off. That's going to increase water capacity from transferring water from the eastern part to the western part of the city. So, yeah, if 400 homes appeared there today, yeah, there would be water pressure issues, but they're not going to appear, that quickly. So the city has, the city's work underway, is expected to get to the capacity there ahead of any need. And, and again, that's an item would be addressed in the feasibility study.
Right.
But even at one house per acre, 400 homes would significantly change the dynamics in the city economically, and I don't want to say socially because that sounds wrong, but it would definitely, a small town feel would be more difficult to maintain.
Yeah,
is what I mean by that.
It would definitely have a lot of effects. So that the addition of that many homes in that part of the city would also almost certainly add to commercial development on the western part of the city as well, and change traffic patterns in a variety of ways. One of the things we've had update from TxDOT that they're going to move forward on is the widening of 105, essentially from Cedar Break Park towards the west throughout the rest of the city, that direction. That widening is expected to ultimately go through the county line. And so that should be 5 lanes all the way through in the next couple of years. The city's, some of you may have previously heard about the city's home grant program. The city had an application approved from the state of Texas Home Project in mid-2018. It required residents to meet certain conditions, and the city worked within the project. 4 residents qualified, and ultimately they received new homes in October of 2020. And there are no, as far as we're aware, there is not a new funding opportunity for that, but we've pledged that should those opportunities become available, we will look at continuing that for the future. Late last year, the city council adopted the Montgomery 2020 comprehensive plan that was in November. That wrapped up a project that began in fall 2018. My understanding is there were previous efforts that had been made in the comprehensive planning that did not result in an adopted plan. So we were able to wrap that up late last year. That document is on the city's website under the news heading. And so, last time I want to mention is the downtown improvement plan. That's an MEDC funded project to improve the streetscape and pedestrian space in the downtown area, which is approximately a 7-month project beginning late November 2020. It's still in the early phases. Starting in February, the EDC should expect monthly updates on that going forward. And that is Gunda Corporation and White Oak Studio in the design efforts on that. And the last page I have on my development report has a list of the businesses that opened in 2020, and those largely come off of the city's permitting. So if there's an in-home business or businesses that for some reason or other may not require city permitting, they may not be on that list. And then following that is a copy of the city engineer's report to city council for the last month. So.
Do we have any more updates on Discount Tire?
Don't have the latest information on that, but I'll make a note of that and I'll follow up with you on that.
Okay, anything else for Richard under City Administrator's Development Report or City Engineer's Report? with your permission then, I will move on. Richard, I assume we don't have anything for the executive session that has popped up?
No, ma'am, not for tonight.
All right, then I will move on through item number 10 and into number 11, board inquiry. For new members, we use this item if you have any outstanding issues that didn't get taken care of during the regular session, or questions that you have that didn't get answered during number 9, or items that you'd like the board to consider at our next meeting. All right, hearing nothing then, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, a motion by Tom, second by Jeff. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 The vote is unanimous, 6-0, and we are adjourned at 7:44. Thank you all very much for your diligent attention to all of these details. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And
Good night,
Ryan,
everyone.
I'll be in touch with you with the minutes. Amy made a wonderful template that she used, and I hope that you will be interested in continuing it, because prior to Amy, the minutes were sparse and uninformative, and subsequently we have gone back to them when we've had questions, and the minutes actually provided value. So I hope that you will be willing to continue that.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a feeling that you're a detail guy, so we'll probably have no issues with the transition.
Yeah. Very detailed guy. Yes. Engineering
Excellent.
personality.
And
Yeah,
Ryan,
I was gonna say.
Ryan, at least while we are in, doing these meetings by Zoom, they are posted to the city's website, typically the day following the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have that availability to pick through recordings for details that you need. And when the time comes and we go back to live in-person meetings, the city is currently looking at streaming and recording opportunities, but at a minimum, they would be recorded by a digital audio recorder. So there's going to be some sort of a recording opportunity that if you need access to, we can assist you with that for the minutes. And I'm always available to help proofread and help edit them between the meetings preparation.
Okay, great.
I did it one time when Amy wasn't feeling well, and I actually found myself with 2 computers, one for looking at what people were doing and one for typing. And I don't know if that makes me obsessive and weird, or if that's actually efficient. So I find it easier to listen to people when I'm looking at them, or I don't know if that's normal.
Yeah, I usually have 2 screens at work where I do minutes on. When I'm at home, it's a little bit different situation, but yeah. Similar
I was gonna say,
setup.
can you get any work done at home, or no?
No, not really.
Yes, I dream of an office. I don't. Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Well,
All right.
thank you very much. I
Thanks for
appreciate you
picking
guys.
up the
Thank
mantle
you.
on that.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
So long.
Good
Good night, y'all.